Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends, and this, our 29th episode in the Band Talk series. As always, I'm so glad you're listening, and I hope that you'll continue to tell your colleagues and friends about the Band Talk podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, as well as TuneIn, Deezer, Spotify, Libsyn, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you have a question or a comment about this series, send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. Also, I ask you to please like the Band Talk Charlie Facebook page. So thank you for helping me to continue to spread the word about this podcast. Joining us on today's podcast will be George Quinlan Jr., president of Quinlan and Fabish Music Company in Burr Ridge, Illinois, and one of the brightest music retailers school band and orchestra directors get to work with. I will venture to say that George Quinlan knows the school music business as good, if not better, than anyone in the business. He and the incredible team he has assembled at Quinlan and Fabish understand what teachers need, they listen to what they want, and they always find a way to deliver. I know you're going to enjoy our conversation coming up in just a couple of minutes. But I want to begin today by taking a minute to talk about the word balance. When we rehearse a work with our ensembles, we always strive for the perfect balance. We listen carefully and we make adjustments as necessary. We instruct some instruments to play a bit louder and some to play softer as we strive to achieve that balance. That perfect sound we hear in our ear. As directors, we try to put ourselves inside the composer's brain, and we work with our students to recreate the sound the composer envisioned when it was composed. Sometimes we even add our own little touch to a work to help it make it sound the way we want it to hear, or think it should sound. Balance. It is so important in our work as music teachers. But balance is also an important part of our lives, our personal lives. Today marks episode 29 of the podcast, and there have been many times in the previous 28 episodes when I asked one of our guests about what they would do different if they could turn back the clock. And I will venture to guess that each one said, spend more time with the family. If given the chance to do it again, probably nothing would have changed. But probably what has changed is their recognition of a need for balance in their lives. I'm 67 years old, and I cannot imagine having to teach during this pandemic. Trying to teach band over Zoom or Google Classroom or Essential Elements Interactive, not that I couldn't do it, and not that I wouldn't have done it, but I think about how I would balance everything. I try to put myself in the shoes of those of you who are trying to teach while you have children at home, also trying to learn, and perhaps a spouse who is also working from home. Wow. When I was 62 years old, I had my massive heart attack. Many times I've thought back and asked the question, why did this happen to me? And the more and more I've thought about it, I realized my life was out of balance. I was consumed by my work. I had scheduled too many dinners out. There was never enough time to exercise, when in reality, I didn't make it a priority. I didn't get the rest I needed, and although my wife was by my side every step of the way, I am sure I didn't take the time I should have to take care of her, to think more about her, to think about her needs, and of course, the need to take care of myself. In short, my life was out of balance. I was driven to do the best job I could, regardless of the price. I was driving myself at a speed that well exceeded the limit that my body could handle. I say this to you because I want you to take a moment and to think about the balance you want in your life. Think about your life and your teaching situation like you would a piece of music. It's especially important if you're teaching virtually or have some sort of hybrid schedule that is requiring you to teach in person and virtually. Think of all the things in your life, like the sections of a band: family, health, food, exercise, rest, flutes, clarinets, trumpets, trombones, percussion. I'm sure you get it. How much of each are you realizing versus how much of each do you really need and want? And the next time you go to rehearsal, the next time you get out of bed, think about how you can make the adjustments you want so you can enjoy your life as you would enjoy conducting that perfect masterwork. And if you find the balance of your life to be quite the opposite, not enough work to get the job done, the job you want to get done, it's okay to make changes in that direction too. But I think if you care enough to listen to this podcast, then that probably will not be your problem. Please know that you will not be giving anything up. Quite the contrary. Think about the pleasure, the enjoyment, the personal satisfaction, and the feeling of accomplishment you will gain. By making a plan and sticking to it, you will emerge a person who has a whole new outlook on life. You'll begin to focus on the positives. The colors you see will be more vibrant. You will find yourself doing more, and you will experience more variety in the things you do. You'll have more energy. You will feel better, and you will bring more life to that person that you see in the mirror every day and to all the people with whom you interact. Oh, the change may feel odd at first, but believe me, it won't take long until it feels good, until it feels just right. No longer will you be just accepting the sound of your life that has become habitual. Now you will be standing on that podium, conducting your life in a beautiful work that will have a lasting impact. And while you do, just remember to keep thinking about it and tweaking it here and there as you search for that perfect balance. I wish you the best of luck. We'll be right back with George Quinlan Jr. right after this message from the folks who help make this podcast available.
Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band. Advantage Network Percussion, where you only get the advantage if you're part of the network. ThePodcastingStore.com, your one-stop shop for the finest in podcasting and virtual learning gear. And Vandercook College of Music, home of the Mecca Continuing Education Program, where you'll find an online class for your every need. ThePodcastingStore.com is your one-stop shop for the finest in podcasting, remote and virtual teaching, and amplification tools. ThePodcastingStore.com features leading brands like Audio-Technica, Heil microphones and headphones, Rolls Electronics, Rode microphones, PreSonus, Yamaha, Focusrite interfaces, Roland, and Blue Yeti. With a product mix compiled by experienced educators and podcasters, ThePodcastingStore.com focuses on providing products that assist you in more clearly communicating your message to your audience, whether you're an educator, podcaster, or hobbyist. ThePodcastingStore.com. Visit them soon.
Well, if you've got a good school music program, you probably also have a hidden weapon in your arsenal. And that weapon is somebody that you can call on and that will bail you out and give you advice and put you in the right direction and let you in on what's going on, and so much more. And that is your school music dealer. And our guest today is a gentleman that I just truly love and respect. I just think he's the greatest person I've ever met in my entire life. I guess maybe not the greatest, but he's right up there. I had a chance to meet him soon after 1994 when I started at Vandercook, and our relationship developed. And the more I was with him, the more I respected him, and the more I realized that all the music teachers who had an opportunity to work with him not only respected him, but they just so appreciated what he has built and the people that work with him. And I could go on and on and on with my accolades. And we had intended to have a conversation. Actually, we did have a conversation earlier this year, and we recorded it and we were ready to go with it. And then COVID hit, and of course the conversation wouldn't have made any sense to anybody. So we kind of tabled it and we said, okay, we're going to get back together. And finally, here it is, September, we're getting back together. And I'm so happy and honored that my buddy George Quinlan Jr. of Quinlan Fabish Music Company is joining the podcast. George, thank you so very, very much.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for the invitation. I enjoy the podcast. Listen to it every week.
I think you're the only person that listens to it. Actually, it's actually no. I want you to know that since I started, my audience has doubled. I'm now at 4 people that listen to this podcast. So no, that's not true. We got to.
Well, this may cut it back down to 2 after we're done.
Now we got a wonderful audience, and it just keeps growing and growing. And I'm just honored about that. So, George, for those listeners who are not from the Midwest, and many people may know you because, you work on the Midwest Clinic Board of Directors, and you've been very active at NAM, the National Association of Music Merchants, and you were president of the National Association of School Music Dealers, and you're on the Vandercook College Board of Trustees. And I mean, you're just involved in so many things, but your real job, and I do think you have a real job, your real job is president of Quinlan and Fabish Music Company. And so tell us about the company. Tell us about how it started and all about it.
Sure. My dad, George Quinlan Sr., and Tom Fabish started the company in 1959. They were both teachers, band directors, teaching at DePaul and various Catholic high schools and grade schools throughout Chicago, and the CYO band, which doesn't exist at this point, but back then it was kind of a big deal that was Tom Fabish's community band, and it was the second performing group to be invited to the Midwest Clinic, and they performed in 1948 and 49. So they both held teaching jobs, sales jobs, did a lot of performing, and they founded our company primarily to support those bands in the Chicago area that were in the parochial schools being taught on a fee basis. And that was kind of the model they had for the first 20 years or so. Over the years, we're now in our 61st year, the company's kind of pivoted from providing and overseeing tuition-based programs with instrument rentals as a sideline to it, to a full-service school music retail organization. Today, we have 9 stores in Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, 25 road reps visiting band and orchestra directors in those states, and about 50 technicians taking care of all those instruments that are in the schools we work with. So we kind of view our mission as trying to make participation in band and orchestra easier for the students and the parents and the teachers by providing a high level of service right at school for them.
It's great. That's great. And man, you do such a wonderful job. So, things are a bit different now. No, they're not a bit different. They're a whole hell of a lot different than when we chatted back in February and we recorded those segments I talked about earlier that never aired. So when the world all shook down in March and when all this started, what was the initial reaction you heard from school music teachers?
Schools closed and online was expected to happen. I think it happened so quickly that it caught almost everyone by surprise. I think some were better prepared than others, but everyone was challenged in some way to try and find a way to provide instruction to the students over the internet. And then the additional challenge was that some areas were better equipped than others with technology, the schools or the communities, particularly schools in the city of Chicago. A lot of the kids had no Wi-Fi at home. So there was a real struggle simply to connect with the students. I think it was so new to everyone. We all struggled. But from our company's point of view, we continued to make weekly visits with our teachers throughout the shutdown using Zoom and phone calls, email, texting, just to stay in touch and see, how we could provide service based, within the restrictions. And we did our best to share some of the best practices we learned from some of the thought leaders in our area. We had some online clinics for our reps and for our directors. A couple of the notable ones were Scott Lang with Be Part of the Music. He had some great ideas on virtual recruiting. And Steve Smith of Hal Leonard talked to us and the teachers about the EE interactive curriculum and website. So we were trying to stay busy and productive throughout the shutdown and the months that came shortly after that.
So with all that, and you baited and shifted as good as anybody, but in the back of your mind, there had to be some other thoughts like what in the world is going on? So what was going through your mind during all that stuff?
Well, at first we thought it was temporary and that by August things would be back to normal and we'd be busier than ever because of all the activity for recruiting that had been postponed in the spring. So as it became more apparent that this was going to linger for a while, within our company, we had to shift to working from home. We had our phones answered and our email and our online orders and things handled from folks working at home, except for very skeleton staff here. And eventually the repair staff started taking work home to keep us caught up on repairs. And our reps started a service called QPS, which is Quinlan Porch Service, making house calls, dropping things off at teachers' houses and families, just because things continue to break and need to be repaired, no matter whether the kids are in school or at home. So we thought it was temporary, but we expected we were going to be busier than normal this fall because we expected it to return to normal by, August.
Yeah. So, since that time, a lot's changed and a lot stayed the same. And the end of the school year came and went, and we're into a new school year. And I know we chatted a little bit off air before we started recording the podcast today. And you kind of mentioned that you're hearing some things are starting to change. Some opinions, some attitudes are starting to change. So what are you hearing from directors now?
Well, compared with March and April, when a lot of them were very frustrated and felt unprepared, I think through the summer, they became more optimistic, and the uncertainty of how schools were going to reopen kept changing. So that didn't help. But many were preparing for complete virtual learning. And once that got started, the plans changed again. So I think the teachers are optimists and they're being creative about the situation, but I know they're frustrated, or at least we feel they're frustrated by the constant changing of the game plan.
Yeah. So right now, your incredible crew at QNF would be normally knee deep in meetings with schools and parents and getting kids with instruments in hand and getting the band year off to a start. You do such a great job of meeting with directors and making decisions about instrument goals and getting beginners fitted and equipping them with an instrument, signing them up for band, all that stuff that directors get overwhelmed with, and you guys do it better than anybody. So with those teachers that have gone ahead and started beginning band, how's your role as a music dealer changed in assisting them with the recruitment process?
Well, if you recall, that was our conversation in February, all the tried and true methods and some new things that we had learned. And, the recruiting process has always been a very hands-on approach, kids trying instruments, trying this, So we have a lot of staff, but now most of our recruiting and rental meetings are held virtually. There have been some nice tools that have come through this, like the mouthpiece kits that Jupiter has come up with, and some great demonstration videos. And we've seen teachers do teleconference fittings, so to speak, with the parents and the kids. But a virtual rental meeting doesn't feel that much different from a live meeting, in the sense that you'd have a bunch of people in a gymnasium and the teacher would explain how the beginning program is going to work, and then introduce their recommendation for an instrument rental company. And that's what we do online. And then we kind of walk them through how they can acquire an instrument online. And very often we set up a curbside pickup day. So Thursday afternoon at 4:00, you get in line, and your instrument and your stand and your book will all be in a bag. It'll be a contact-free delivery. And then you take it home and the lessons start virtually. One of the things that really has helped is those EEI videos about how to put your instrument together. That, for many teachers, was some of their biggest concerns, especially clarinet and saxophone. How do you teach a kid, to put the reed on and the ligature and all that stuff when you can't be in a chair next to them? But those videos are really good, and they're really helpful. So these days, when we visit the schools, because the teachers, for the most part, are there, their workstation is no longer a podium and a music stand. It's much like yours, 4 screens, a wireless headset, mic, digital keyboard, a couple laptops. They look like they could be working the air control tower at O'Hare, the way the gear is set up. But they're staying positive and doing the best job they can teaching.
That's great. So when they do these meetings, are they doing like with Zoom, and parents can type in questions and all that kind of stuff, and it gets really interactive, huh?
Yeah, and they share the screen. They show the website, and we kind of walk them through. Here's step 1. You click here. Step 2 is here. Don't forget to click here.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and I love the fact that it's all ready for them. It's like picking up their groceries. They set a time with you and come by, and there it is. That's awesome. That's great. So how about the ones that have not started? Are you hearing anything from them? Are they planning to start in January, or you think they're still going to start this fall, or are they going to wait till the fall of 2021? Any something in the air about that?
Yeah. Well, I polled all our reps Labor Day weekend to say, okay, here's all the schools that have not recruited yet. What are their plans? And they were in about 5 different camps. A, they're going to go virtual right now. B, they're going to wait until students return, and they thought that might be in the end of the first quarter or semester or trimester in some cases. Some were waiting till January. Some had decided, we're just not going to do it this year. It can't be done. But we've noticed a noticeable shift, particularly in the last, it's been 2 weeks, that more and more schools are going to try and get kids started the best they can in this environment. So we've had a lot more book virtual meetings in the last couple of weeks. So I think the momentum is shifting closer to getting kids started now.
Yeah, I'm a great believer that, sports is such a driver of public opinion. I mean, whether people watch sports or don't watch sports, it still has an incredible impact. And I think the fact that professional teams and college athletics are coming back, and high school sports and things like that, that's got to be great news for teachers, because what it does is it helps shape public opinion, and I think that's so important, and I think we face a crisis here, right? So in your opinion, George, if a teacher elects not to start beginners this year, what do you think the impact's going to be to their total program?
Well, first of all, we have to respect teachers' decisions. They're based on the best available information they have at that time. Even during normal times, occasionally we have a school district that purposefully moves a grade level up for a particular reason. And when they do that to improve the program, it usually ends up being a win-win situation with maybe they get better staffing or they get more contact time with the kids. So we see improved retention or even sometimes bigger numbers. So that's great when it works out that way. But I think when it's reactive to a situation like this, we also have to be aware that I always call that from our perspective, the year we never get back, because, once you move from fifth to sixth, rarely does it come back to fifth grade. So you have to be prepared to realize if you make that change now, that it's probably going to be a permanent change for the future. So I hope people that are thinking that way think that through, or at least have a contingency for next year.
Yeah, I'm so with you. One of your earlier comment there, we got to remember that perception in many cases is reality. I mean, whatever they perceive, whether it's right or wrong, I mean, what they think is real. But my fear with all this, is that the time that the students would spend in band, that time has not evaporated. I mean, it's not gone away. That time is still there, and so the problem is that many of those students who would have spent time in band, whether they were in band before this all shook down or where they might be thinking about joining band, this fall. I mean, that time, the time those students would have spent in band playing their instrument is now probably spent doing some other things. And it's in my hope, that those other things are not bringing them more satisfaction than being in band right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, of course, we're preaching to the choir, but I saw a Facebook meme the other day that really struck home with me. It said some students would never get through school if it wasn't for band. Band is their safe place. Music is their home. Music makes everything else seem more tolerable. And I think sometimes it's the non-musical parts of band and orchestra that are most important to some of the kids. And I hope that we don't lose that sense of belonging where the kids feel that's where I need to be as a result of this.
Yeah, well, you're going to be in band. You're with your buddies. That's where your buddies are. You like hanging out with your buddies. I mean, in addition to learning about the art and feelings and expressions, it's a great social environment. And let's face it, nobody wants to be isolated. Nobody wants to be alone. They want agreement. People seek agreement. They want to be with their friends. So band is perfect. And so to that end, I mean, keeping kids engaged, interested and engaged. Whether they're beginners or students that have played their instruments, 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years more, whatever, the most important thing teachers can do right now, keeping those kids engaged, don't you think? I mean, I think if you were to get a call from a band director today and they said, George, my school's staying virtual, no in-person classes, what should I do? And that you got to keep those kids engaged, but what might you tell them? What kind of direction might you give them on that?
Well, I'm not in their shoes. So the first thing I would do is reach out to some of the teachers who have been doing great work in the virtual learning environment, because there are many. And we would ask them for ideas and support and try and link that teacher to the one who's struggling, and maybe find several more to help out. Because no one has all the answers, but everybody has some of the answers. So we need to keep the communication channels open, and very often our reps are that conduit to connecting teachers who are struggling with teachers who are just, doing great work. So that's kind of how we view our role. We're not experts, but we do know a lot of them.
And that's one of the most valuable things that you provide those directors is you help them connect the dots, and that's great. And we know that communication is vitally important, whether you put them in touch with somebody else or whether you could actually help them share the message, and the message we send to those different constituencies, I'm sure, has got to be different as well. I mean, you speak to the administration, you got to talk administration talk. You speak to the parents, you got to talk parent talk, and we got to make sure that information's all received and understood. So I'm sure that in your role, you also talk to some parents, and so what kind of message are you sending the parents now?
Well, I think parents need to realize that band and orchestra, playing musical instrument, teaches a lot of other skills in addition to learning how to play that instrument. The 21st century skills that were all highlighted, music covers them all, particularly the 4 C's, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. What other subject challenges students more than band or orchestra? I can't think of any. So I think from the parents' point of view, they need to realize that not only do they learn to play an instrument and be part of this group, but they learn teamwork that prepares them for college and for cooperation in their career. So many non-music lessons come from the study of being in a band or an orchestra. So what could be better than participating in music? I can't think of anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, we've already drunk the Kool-Aid on it, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we know. I mean, we know our lives are products of the fact that we've been involved in music. Okay. I'm going to shift gears with you here a little bit. As I've been following life, talking to a lot of directors, as I'm sure you have, and following social media and the COVID-19, we know that more people are staying at home. We know that the whole online shopping thing has gone like totally bonkers, totally crazy. So that being said, I'm seeing and hearing more references from teachers about students who are buying or acquiring instruments that I've never heard of in my entire life, and they've never heard of. And we know that there's a huge risk when a person buys an instrument online that doesn't have a good track record, that are just not quality products. So how can directors be proactive and get the message out to their parents about, hey, buyer beware,
Mhm. I think, often I think, what is an expert? And sometimes it's an expert that knows this much more. And since we're on a podcast, my fingers are about a quarter of an inch apart. They know this much more than the person they're addressing. But I think it's important for teachers to realize they are experts. They don't know that much more. They know this much more. My arms are stretched far apart. So if they're a trumpet player, I think they're confident in their knowledge of brass instruments and how well they are made. But they may not be as confident in woodwinds or strings. But they have to realize that even a first-year teacher should be confident that their 12 years in education of learning about band or orchestra, they're probably more familiar with the reputation of quality instrument makers than your typical parent. So I think if we don't educate them and make strong recommendations for quality, we can't really blame them for going online and finding the cheapest thing they can, because they're just doing what they think is right. Just this week, I was at a school and the director said this kid was really struggling with his French horn. So I said, well, let me see it. It ended up the parents bought a single B-flat horn. They were trying to learn out of the F horn book.
Oh my.
So, it was like, well, you didn't recommend this and we certainly didn't sell it. So I don't know, maybe they can make it a lamp. I don't know. But I think parents realize that teachers have their best interests in mind. And when they emphasize that their goal is to set this child up for success and to not set them up for failure, and that a high quality instrument is part of that equation, high quality instruments actually become a bargain when you factor in the useful life. So if you had an instrument that's $1,000 and they played it for 8 years, it comes out to less than $10 per month, amortized over that period of time. Plus, their children can use it when they're in band 20 years later. So I think if the teachers have to realize that they are experts, their opinion is valued, and the parents appreciate the guidance that they provide.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail right on the head. I mean, that was just a total bullseye. I think sometimes teachers are afraid to suggest or make suggestions, or they're afraid to do that. But on the other side of the coin, I think parents appreciate it. I mean, the parents, even though they might be able to save some money by going online, they don't want to buy a piece of crap for their kid where their kid's going to fail. So if they have some sort of affirmation, if you will, that by making this decision and doing this is going to help their child, 9 times out of 10, I think we're going to do that. Recently I had a conversation with Don Stinson on my podcast, and Don real well, director of bands at Joliet Central. And he had a great line. It was something to the effect of like, buy it nice or buy it twice. And I just love that because, I've heard it said another way, there's cost and there's price. And though something may have a price that's less, in the end, it's usually going to have to replace it. And then it ends up actually costing you or the parent even, or the school even more money, and not only will it cost them more money, sometimes it costs them their child's experience in music because the kid gets turned off and doesn't want to do it. And there's no price that's more valuable than that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. High quality instruments have a positive effect on retention rates. Poor quality instruments do the opposite. Don's quote was awesome. I don't know if he coined that or if he stole it, but it's great. I intend to steal it. One thing when we're talking with teachers, sometimes that we're talking about the condition and the age and the quality of school-owned instruments. And, we've sat down with a lot of schools and done complete inventory evaluations and aging of that. And when you provide data like that to the administration, they're shocked. They're shocked that these kids are still using instruments that sometimes are 30, 40, 50 years old. They're trying to figure out what else in the school that the kids use every day is that age, and they say all the desks have been replaced, the chairs, the plumbing fixtures, everything, but not our tubas. They're still from 1962. So they're very shocked and surprised. And a lot of times that is a way to improve, the quality and the get some new equipment for these kids to use.
Yeah, that the older equipment stuff. I mean, that's so true. I read recently where you acquired Muncie Music Center in Muncie, Indiana, which I think is great. And I got a story there. In 1975, I was taking some summer classes at Ball State, and I was working a band in Madison Heights High School in Anderson, Indiana. And I bought a new Bach Stradivarius trumpet from Muncie Music Center. In fact, I still have it. It's a large bore Bach Strad. It played great. It's the best horn I think I've ever owned in my entire life. I still have it, and I played with it. But a few years back, I was talking to Ted Wagner, who used to be at the Bach man at Selmer, Con Selmer, right? And I was telling him about this horn, and he looked at it and he says, "Charlie," he says, "you got to be careful." He says, "Because pretty soon you're not going to get that sound you had anymore." And I said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "Because you got red rot starting on the inside of this thing building out, and pretty soon you're going to start getting some small leaks in the instrument." And he says, all of a sudden that instrument ain't going to sound as good as it used to sound. And I don't think teachers always understand that, or administrators certainly don't understand that too, that even though the instrument may look good from the outside, it's deteriorating from the inside, right? It's just kind of corroding and yeah. So that's good. I love that. Yeah. Buy nice or buy twice. That's our new motto, right? Okay. Here's a dark question for you, but I think it had got to be asked, So how much longer do you think this whole uncertainty thing, virtual teaching, learning, hybrid situations, whatever, online, how long, if this continues, is it going to have a serious, sustained negative impact on the school band movement and the school band and individual teacher schools?
Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of conversations lately, and I think it may already have had a negative impact. I've spoken with a lot of teachers who have experienced more drops than ever before, particularly some of the older and more advanced students. I think we'll have to work hard to try and get them back, because playing in band and orchestra, it's a group collaborative effort. But I think once we're able to return to playing in an ensemble together, we should reach out to them and let them know they're welcome back. I'm confident that the teachers are going to find creative ways once this is behind us to build enrollment back up to where it was and can be. And I believe 2021 is going to be our best year ever because, last year's group, we experienced lower retention rates when school stopped in March. And then this year, even with virtual recruiting, it's not the same. Most schools are down in numbers when they recruit virtually. So I think 2021, we're going to have to recruit our little hearts out to rebuild some of these programs, and we'll have to stay positive and look for every opportunity that's presented to bring more kids into band and orchestra.
Yeah, welcoming them back, George. That is so powerful. And I got a story to tell about that. I was teaching in Olathe, Kansas, and it was fall, and we were having marching band practice. And there was this young lady, Melissa. She was an alto saxophone player. She was a first year in the band, and she was in band and she was in volleyball. And so we're having band camp and she's having volleyball practice. And about the third day, she is just totally exhausted. She is on fumes. And she comes into my office and she's crying. And she says, Mr. McGeaney, she said, I just can't take it anymore. She said, I'm sorry, but I got to quit band. I got to quit band because I got volleyball and I just been thinking about this and I want to quit. And I said, are you sure, Melissa? And she goes, uh-huh. And she's got tears streaming down her face. So I walked her up to the guidance counselor, Mrs. Beard, and I said, Mrs. Beard, Melissa, I said, it's just, she's overwhelmed. She's doing volleyball. She's doing band. She really feels that she can't do band anymore. And I said, we need to, probably need to change your schedule. And she says, okay. So she changes Melissa's schedule. We're 3 weeks into the school year and the band's walking into the gymnasium to play for a pep rally. And standing against the wall is Melissa. She's kind of standing there as the pep rally going, waiting for some of her friends. And I said, hi, Melissa, how are you? And she starts crying. And she goes, I'm just miserable. And I says, why? She says, I miss all my friends in band. And I said, well, Melissa, I thought you were going to be happy if you were out of band. No, she says, I'm not happy. And I said, well, would you like to get back in band? And she goes, uh-huh. And I says, okay. So we walked back up to the counselor. I said, Mrs. Beard, Melissa wants to get back into band. And we signed her up for band. And she was one of the greatest band students for the rest of the year. So your point about reaching out to the kids is just so spot on. That's just awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's shift gears here again. Let's look into the crystal ball and project what you see 6 months from now.
Well, 6 months from now will be April. So we'll be almost at the end of this school year. So I guess so much depends on if there's a vaccine or a treatment. I know one thing, if it doesn't exist, teachers will have found improved ways to teach music online because learn by doing, but it places us close to the end of the school year. And, sometimes I worry about families, that are working from home and have 2 or 3 kids that are learning from home, about their just mental and emotional health. That'll be one full year of isolation, so to speak, for those families. And I think I worry about that more than anything. So I'm hopeful that there will be. I mean, we've got the best minds in the world trying to solve this problem. So hopefully we'll get there before then.
Yeah. And next year we hope that we're back to normal or as normal as we can be.
Yeah. We've already had, I think about 5 music stores in the Chicago area close.
Wow.
Just as a result of this, and the countless restaurants and all that type of thing. So in the meantime, if your listeners can support their local music stores, we would greatly appreciate it. I realize some of the health experts are predicting the situation to last that long, but I'm hopeful we'll find a solution before that.
Yeah. And again, you guys do such great job and great work. And all people got to do is call their local music store and tell them what they need or what they're looking for. And I know you guys will go out of your way to do it for them. So George, with COVID and virtual teaching and that, what's been your biggest disappointment outside of the fact that education's different? I mean, has there been a big disappointment for you?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been me personally, but I think of all the people that have been affected, and we all have, I think I feel most compassionate for the last year class of 2020, the high school kids. They missed out graduation, prom, their final concert if they were in music, the musical, their final game if they were in sports. All those events are like once in a lifetime rite of passage events that you can't replace. And they'll probably be the only class to ever experience that. So I felt particularly sad for them. But then I think about the rest of us, and I think about like folks our parents' age, that they grew up in the Great Depression. And then as soon as, they were young adults, World War II broke out. And, it was the most deadly war in human history. And so here they are in their young 20s or early 30s, just getting started. And they had like the worst period in American history behind them already. And so what did they do? They rebuilt society. They started families. They created some of the greatest inventions and improvements in culture and business and wealth in history. One thing they didn't do was complain about their misfortune. They just pulled themselves up and got to work. And hopefully we can learn that lesson from them.
That's a great lesson. And I'm so glad they didn't have Facebook and all that stuff way back then, right?
Yeah.
Because all that does is give people a chance to vent. Oh man, I wish they would just cancel all that stuff. But anyhow, so tell us, how can teachers, or how should teachers right now reach out to their school music dealer during this time, and what kind of things can they be asking you for help with?
Sure. Well, every school music dealer I know just loves to help in any way they can. I think being creative and working together, we'll find some great solutions to these problems. And I think teachers can realize that our success as a music company is dependent on their success and their students' success. So if you have an idea, let us know. Sometimes the best ideas seem really far-fetched at first, but as you kind of vet them out, ultimately they can have great impact on recruiting or retention. So yeah, just let's try new things together.
Yeah, you're so right. Your success is and their success go hand in hand. And I really would hope that more teachers understand that the music industry, in the larger picture of the music industry, and of course the music dealers are working for them. I mean, without them, the band movement would be nowhere near where it needs to be, because I don't know any teachers that would be willing to make their own instruments and write all their own music and do all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's impossible to do it, and we need that ecosystem, if you will, to support band music. You're spot on. Okay, so last question, George. What message do you want to send every music teacher and band director out there?
Well, it's the same message that I have for people in our company. We have to stay positive and we have to do our best. That's all you can really expect of people, is to do the best. We know it's not the best situation. We know our company is not thriving during this pandemic, but we can only do our best. And I think if we expect the same results as when things are normal, we're not going to get there. But all we can do is really do the best we can. And, from a teacher's perspective, if they can just provide the most positive experience for the kids, I think they're doing their job as well as they can. I think we need to find ways to let kids know they're wanted and needed in that ensemble. It's not the same, but I'm confident teachers are finding new ways to motivate their students to learn, so they'll be ready to return playing together as soon as they're able to do so.
Yeah. And there's nobody that does their best better than you do. And, something I didn't mention throughout our conversation, and one thing that I just think is one of the very coolest things that you do is you do these educator awards that are voted on by other educators. And you started this a long time ago. And, before we sign off, would you talk just a minute about those Chicago Land Educator Awards? And I guess you do one now in Indiana and you do one in Michigan or all that. But I've seen teachers cry when they've been handed this and recognized by their peers. I think it's so powerful. So when you talk about doing your best, also the whole thing about recognizing those that are doing their best too, right? And so talk about that for just a second.
Yeah. Well, we go back to the first part of our conversation when we were shifting from being a teaching organization that also provided instruments to basically a music company. We were a virtual unknown. So, one of our ideas was, well, why don't we recognize those people who are most impactful to our business, which are band and orchestra directors. And so we didn't want that award to be our best customer award or our favorite customer. So we had 3 high-profile college directors choose. So we had readers of our newsletter submit names of colleagues, friends, mentors, whomever that they highly respected, and asked the 3, which was Don DeRoche from DePaul University, Victor Zajac at Vandercook, and John Painter from Northwestern. We said, would you choose 3 middle school and 3 high school teachers? And they did so. The class of '89, we call them. And then that class plus those 3 chose the next class of 1990, and then we've continued it for now 31 years. We held the event in our parking lot this year. Usually we have a nice event with, food and beverages in a nice room, but that was canceled. But, it was so impactful that the teachers came out and they just really were excited to have somewhat of a sense of community. And again, the recognition that their peers thought that they are really excellent at their job. It goes a long way. So we're really happy with the program.
31 years you've been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I hope you do it for 31 more, George.
So do I. Thanks, Charlie.
God bless you. Hey, buddy, thanks for joining us on the podcast, man. And give Wanda joins me in sending our love to you and Cindy and the family. And be well, brother. I can't wait to see you soon.
Thanks, Charlie. Best to you and Wanda as well.
In the world of school music dealers, George Quinlan Jr. is a rock star. If you are lucky enough to be working with a dealer like Quinlan and Fabish Music Company, well, you've hit the jackpot. I'm a great believer that your school music dealer is the secret ingredient to any successful school band or orchestra program. And for many in the Midwest, that secret ingredient, that pinch of salt, is George Quinlan and his staff at Quinlan and Fabish Music Company. Well, that's it for Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Next week, we'll be back with more great conversations. Until then, this is Charlie Mangini saying, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.